and welcome to another edition of AppSec Decoded. I'm Taylor Armerding, security advocate with the Synopsys Software Integrity Group, and we're coming to you from the 2023 RSA Conference in San Francisco. And today, we're going to be talking about one of the provisions of the Biden administration's National Cybersecurity Strategy, released less than 2 months ago. And with me to talk about it is Tim Mackey, Head of Software Supply Chain Risk Strategy within the Synopsys Software Integrity Group. Okay, that provision, which they're called pillars actually, that one's labeled Pillar 3, which is one of 5, and it calls for the executive and legislative branches to, quote, shape market forces to drive security and resilience. And Tim, thank you for being here. And the word I couldn't help but notice within Pillar 3 that got the most media attention is liability, as in holding software vendors liable for damages caused by their products if they haven't built, quote, reasonable security measures into them. And there is a safe harbor provision also proposed, which we'll get to in just a moment. But my understanding is that, quote, reasonable security measures, unquote, will be based on several existing standards, including those from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So give us a summary of what you think some of the most important of those measures are.
Ever notice that when, you get a measure like this, people want to have the blame feature?
Yes, yes.
This is the blame feature.
Okay.
And the blame is actually well placed. So if you look at various documents that have actually come out of the U.S. government over the last, let's say, 6-8 months or so, there's been a pretty clear message that, hey, wait a minute, why are we actually going and saying it's the operator's responsibility to do things?
Okay.
It's shame on you because you didn't secure the something. You got breached or ransomwared or whatever because you didn't do the thing.
Okay.
How did you know what the right thing was?
Yeah.
It's pretty fundamental. If you get back to RTFM, well, who reads manuals? Are there manuals anymore? Shouldn't the software itself be designed to a security standard?
Sure.
Shouldn't the practices for how the development teams go and do the things that they're doing follow some recognized rubric of, well, do these things and you've got a pretty good chance of having a, let's not call it secure, but a reasonably secure mechanism of saying this can go into an environment. Right. At which point then you can start talking about things like the context. So if I'm just writing a crappy little utility app to go and solve a problem that makes sense to me and 10 other people, as long as it's functional, that's okay.
Right.
But when you look at how development teams work, they've got their set of functional and non-functional requirements. And at no point in time does the functional and non-functional requirements include the risk associated with the technology.
Right.
They're worried about features and feature flow and having unique and differentiated value in the thing.
Yeah.
And when was the last time that you heard of anybody paying extra for security?
Well, exactly. And we're going to get to that too.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's where some of these things really boil down to. Okay, so if you've got NIST and the Secure Software Development Framework, which is NIST Special Publication 800-218, and yes, I've spent a lot of time with it, so I have memorized that.
Yeah, I was going to say, remember that.
Yes, I do remember. It is very, very important. And as it turns out, while we're recording it, there's been some developments in SSDF land. So organizations should look to a rubric like SSDF. It's not the only one out there. There are a variety of other standards. Automotive has ISO 21434.
Right.
Industrial controls have IEC 62443. And there's a long list of these types of baselines and frameworks. In fact, there's probably more frameworks than there are people following the frameworks to a certain degree. But those are the reasonable security measures.
Right.
It's not, hey, I've slapped this together and, oh, by the way, I've designed this in from the outset and I'm doing the right thing. I'm the responsible party.
I heard one guy describe it as make sure that it functions as intended and functions only as intended. Which I thought,
it is literally a case of if you can't explain why it's behaving the way that it does, and it's your software, that's a problem.
Right. Okay. Exactly. That's good. But as we all know, and as the government, I think, is trying to is agreeing, there is nothing that is 100% bulletproof. And so there is a so-called safe harbor provision for organizations. I think I'm getting this right. Organizations that make the best effort and still something bad happens. So give us a little explanation of that.
So here's the core scenario. As you mentioned, no software is ever going to be perfect.
Right.
And one of the analogies that I use is that you could make the most securely developed, designed software. You could test it every possible way that you can think of.
Right.
You can follow every best practice that's available today.
Right.
And now you have this true diamond of a piece of software. There are 0 flaws in it. It is the Hope Diamond. 3 years from now, someone could go and completely have invalidated one of the assumptions that was under the best practices umbrella.
Sure.
Having a safe harbor clause enables the vendor to say, we're doing the right things. Yes, we're going to have to course correct as a result of this. Maybe that course correction is everybody upgrade.
Right.
But that may not be possible.
Sure.
Like, one of the things that a lot of organizations don't think about is that this world of DevSecOps and high velocity software delivery, this whole continuous delivery paradigm, that works really, really well for mobile applications and server-based applications. But does it really work well if you've got, say, an implanted medical device? Do you really want an over-the-air update for something that's inside your body? Do you want to have an over-the-air update for the thing that is handling the power plant? These things have long lifespans. There's a different paradigm associated with them. And a safe harbor becomes a really important thing. If you've done the right thing, you've followed all of the stuff, you've made the Hope Diamond.
Right.
Well, you've already done more than what most people are willing to do.
Yeah.
So a safe harbor should be an important consideration.
And you shouldn't be sanctioned or punished when something like that comes along. Exactly. Thank you for giving us some insight into what has the potential, anyway, of changing the cybersecurity landscape for the better. And thanks to you, our audience. We appreciate you being with us. Once again, this is AppSec Decoded. I'm Taylor Armerding for the Synopsys Software Integrity Group. We help organizations build trust into their software.